Hey guys, it's Mrs. Schacht here, and I am rounding out the domestic policy for chapters 26, 27, and 28 by talking about the Great Society programs under Lyndon B. Johnson. So, this is essentially an umbrella of programs that were passed under LBJ, and they were all meant to address the issue of poverty in America. And so he found multiple ways to try and eliminate poverty, whether it was through creating educational programs, financial assistance, healthcare, etc. To give you guys a little context and background on Lyndon B. Johnson, he did serve as Kennedy's vice president and was immediately sworn in after Kennedy's assassination. He ended up serving the rest of John F. Kennedy's term, and then he was elected to his own full term in 1964. You can see that from this map, he was an incredibly popular candidate. He ran against Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater, and even though Goldwater lost the presidential election, it was really the beginning of the rise of a movement in the country centered around conservative ideas and values. So after Lyndon B. Johnson, you're going to see a series of Republican presidents after 1968. So getting back to the poverty in the United States, under LBJ's presidency, approximately 1/5 of all Americans were living below the poverty line. And like I said, this is what he wanted to address. So the Great Society is really the umbrella of all of these programs that were meant to hopefully reduce and maybe even eliminate poverty in the United States. While there are dozens of programs that were passed between 1963 and 1968, I'm just going to touch on some of the more important ones. And the first thing I want to mention is the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964. So this is the program that actually established many of the programs that you're going to see here. And this is the essentially law that he signed that will give money and create government agencies to allow these programs to run. So the first kind of category I'd like to discuss is social welfare. And two programs that were created to address the social welfare of Americans was the Job Corps and Head Start. So Job Corps was specifically designed for low-income teenagers, ages 16 to 24, and this gave them an opportunity to go get their GED or get vocational training in the trades like plumbing and carpentry. Additionally, what I found to be kind of interesting is that 60,000 people each year still today take part in the Job Corps. But again, by having job training and then having a job, that will hopefully get many out of poverty. Another program that was created was Head Start, which is also still around today. And this provides low-income children with not only a preschool education, but also dental and health screenings. So again, by getting young kids into a preschool program, most preschool programs actually cost money, so this subsidizes the cost. Then that'll put them on the path to kindergarten and elementary school and beyond. Okay, two of the most important programs that are still very much around today that also address the social welfare of Americans are healthcare programs. One of the many reasons that Americans, even today, either fall below the poverty line or carry a lot of financial debt is due to healthcare costs. So these two programs built off of Social Security, as we know, that was passed by Franklin D. Roosevelt under the New Deal programs in 1935. And these two programs were essentially an extension of that. Number one was Medicare. So Medicare provides health insurance to the elderly over the age of 65. As many of you know, many of us get our health insurance from our jobs. And so once somebody retires, they no longer have a job, so they no longer have a health insurance provider. We also know that in older age, there tend to be more health issues. So by providing health insurance for the elderly, it was meant to hopefully eliminate any sort of medical debt that they may accrue through bills, so on and so forth. To give you guys just a couple modern day statistics, approximately 60 million Americans take advantage of Medicare today. And as a result of this program, the number of senior citizens that were living under the poverty line decreased because of the health insurance provision. Medicaid is very similar, but it provides health insurance for low-income individuals. But it also doesn't just extend to low-income individuals. It also provides health insurance for people who are disabled, specifically those who are blind and deaf. It also allows for mental health care for low-income families as well. Approximately 60 million plus Americans receive Medicaid today. All right. And again, guys, just to kind of like jump off of that, if you take a look at this, in 1962, half of elderly Americans were uninsured. Today, it's only 2%. And there was actually a 15% increase in the life expectancy over the next 20 years after Medicare, again, health insurance for the elderly, was passed. When it comes to Medicaid, again, health insurance for the low income, I just want to show you guys that it's really more than that. It's much deeper. Yes, you have a lot of low-income adults taking advantage, but you also have children, those who are blind and disabled, and foster care children as well. So it's more than just low-income individuals who are beneficiaries of Medicaid also. When it comes to programs that protect and provide food, two really important ones are the Child Nutrition Act, which allows for low-income children to receive a subsidized or low-cost breakfast at school. And this serves approximately 10 million children a day as of a few years ago. And then, of course, we have food stamps, which are essentially, today it's known as SNAP, but ultimately this provides low-income families with subsidies to purchase groceries. If you guys take a look at this, 47% of all people who receive SNAP benefits are children, as well as non-elderly, non-disabled adults, as well as the elderly and or disabled. So more children specifically are beneficiaries of food stamps. In terms of who can essentially, what am I looking for here? Who can apply for food stamps and how much they get and et cetera. That typically is different state by state, but just wanted you guys to see the types of people that might qualify and, like I said, are beneficiaries of food stamps, which today is known as SNAP. Then, of course, we have programs that address education. The mindset that if we receive an education, we'll go ahead and get a good job. And if we get a good job, then poverty may not be a challenge, right, in our lives. So the Elementary and Secondary Education Act essentially provides public schools with government funding. And while many low-income schools do receive federal funding through the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, this was all, a lot of that money goes toward new technology, it goes towards textbooks and supplies that might be difficult to come by, especially in low-income areas. In addition to that, we have the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, which, as you guys know, provided educational programming such as Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for Children. So again, creating PBS, creating NPR radio, and again, providing especially young kids with educational programming. And then we have the National Endowment for the Arts and the Humanities, which is an incredible program that provides Americans with the ability to hear orchestras play, to go see musicals and plays. And this provides federal funding for many theater programs across the United States. Housing and urban development is actually now today a government agency and a cabinet position. But what the Housing and Urban Development Act, or HUD as it's known, did was it created affordable apartments for low-income Americans. It also provided money for landlords to rent private apartments to low-income Americans as well. And it also provided money to low-income areas to create kind of community centers and improve either community centers and parks in low-income neighborhoods. And then, believe it or not, LBJ also tackled the environment. And these are just two of the laws that he passed. The Clean Air Act, which of course requires businesses to address the air pollution that they emit into the atmosphere. And many amendments have been added to the Clean Air Act since, but it does allow the government to set limits on how much pollution, cars can emit. And again, all in the name of protecting our environment. The National Wilderness Preservation System did just that. It set aside and preserved national wilderness land and parks. And when it was first created, it has since been expanded. 9 million acres of land was set aside as national forest land. As you guys can see, a lot of these programs are important to America today. And if you look at the amount of money that we spend federally on programs, you have mandatory programs, meaning the government has to allocate money to these programs by law. And you'll notice that Social Security, again from 1935, but now Medicare, Medicaid, and income security, which includes SNAP, food stamps, those are all programs that the government has to spend money on each year. So that has really been built in to our country's federal budget. One other thing I'd like to mention here, just because this is something that LBJ addresses, is the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. So we haven't spoken much about immigration since the 1920s, but what this law did is it abolished all of the quota laws of the 1920s that tried to limit Southern and Eastern Europeans. And it gave preference to those who had family here. And it also allowed for refugees, specifically from countries like Vietnam and Cuba, escaping communism. But you'll also notice that where immigrants are coming from are changing drastically. So we no longer see a majority coming from Europe, but now we're going to start to see more from Central and South America and Asia going forward. All right, folks, I hope that helps you guys understand the Great Society and all of the programs that Lyndon B. Johnson created. As you can imagine, there are going to be many who criticize these programs, many who question whether the money that was meant for these programs was really going toward the Vietnam War. But these programs created by a Democratic president do start to open up the door and pave the way for more conservative presidents down the line. So hope you guys have a great day.